Welcome to Gods, Myths and Legends, where we bring the ancient tales back to life. In this episode we'll talk about one of the 12 Olympian gods, Apollo, the son of Zeus and Leto. He was more complex than you expect, and his stories will make you think twice about him. Let's begin. Apollo's tale begins with his mother Leto, a beautiful Titan goddess. She caught the eye of Zeus, the king of the gods, and became pregnant with his children. But Zeus' wife Hera was furious when she found out. She cursed Leto so that she could not give birth anywhere on earth. But Leto was determined to find a place for her children. She traveled across the world until she reached the island of Delos, which was floating in the sea. It was not affected by Hera's curse, because it was not fixed to the ground. There, Leto gave birth to two divine twins. The first one was Artemis, the goddess of the hunt and the moon, who helped her mother with the delivery of her brother. The second one was Apollo, the god of light, music and prophecy. His birth was amazing. He grew very quickly, from a baby to a full-grown god in a very short time. Some say it took only a day. Others say a few days. He ate nectar and ambrosia, the food of the gods, and became a strong and handsome god. Apollo was the god of many talents. He was the god of music, truth, prophecy, healing, the sun, light, plague, poetry, and more. He played the lyre, a musical instrument with strings, and he was a master of archery. Let's take a look at the symbols that are connected to him. Because there are so many of them, they will be listed shortly. After that, the stories regarding Apollo begin. These stories represent him perfectly, and some of the symbols are logically linked to him. Golden arrows. These shows us that Apollo is beautiful, clear-minded and pure-spirited. Lyre. This shows us that Apollo rules over music and art. Laurel wreath. This shows us that Apollo is glorious, honorable, victorious and accomplished. The sun. This shows us that Apollo is the god of light and brings illumination, truth and knowledge. Tripod. This shows us that Apollo is wise and in charge of the Oracle of Delphi. Serpents or snakes. This shows us that Apollo is good at healing and prophecy and that he killed a big snake called Python. Bow. This shows us that Apollo's bow is shaped like a moon or a crescent, like the bow of Artemis, his sister. But his bow means music and distance. With those symbols in mind, let's go right into the stories of Apollo, where you'll see some of the reasons behind those symbols. Apollo and Python. Python was a huge snake that lived in the center of the earth. It ruled over the Oracle of Delphi, a place where people could ask questions about the future. Python had a big enemy, Apollo. Python had chased Apollo's mother, Leto, when she was pregnant with him. Apollo was very angry and wanted to get his revenge. Some myths say that Apollo was just a few days old when he decided to fight Python. He took some arrows that Hephaestus, the god of fire, had made for him. He went to Delphi, where Python was waiting for him. They had a terrible fight that shook the whole earth, but Apollo was stronger and faster. He shot Python with his arrows, some say thousands of them, before he killed it. He freed the oracle from Python's power. Apollo became the new owner of the oracle, and he became the god of prophecy. He made it a place of wisdom and truth, where people could learn from him. Apollo and his lyre. Apollo's lyre wasn't actually made by him. It was created by Hermes, the messenger of the gods. When Hermes was a newborn, he was already quite clever. He stole Apollo's herd of sacred cows, and he fashioned the first lyre from a tortoise shell and the cows. When Apollo found out, he was furious, but was instantly captivated by the music that came from the lyre. To make peace, Hermes gave Apollo his lyre. Apollo later on became the master of this instrument. It is said that when he played the lyre, neither the gods nor mortals could resist his enchantment. His skill was unmatched, and this is how he became associated with music. The melodious tunes he played represented harmony and peace, and so he was worshipped as the god of music and poetry. Now, his connection with the lyre extended further with Orpheus, a legendary musician and a poet. His mother was Calliope, the muse of epic poetry, and in some versions of the myth, Apollo himself was Orpheus' father. It is said that Apollo gifted Orpheus a lyre and taught him how to play, enchanting his inherent musical talents. Such talents led Orpheus to charm almost anything and anyone around him, from the wildest beast and the most static of stones to the gods themselves. After Orpheus' death, his lyre was found in the river. Apollo then sought out his father Zeus to replace the lyre among the stars. Honoring his request, Zeus immortalized the instrument as the constellation as we now know as Lyre. Apollo was the god of many things, and he had many lovers, both with gods and mortals. But he was not always lucky in love. He often suffered from rejection, betrayal, or loss. One of his most famous and tragic love stories was with Daphne. Daphne was a beautiful nymph who loved nature. She was the daughter of Pinos, the river god. Daphne had many admirers, but she didn't want to be with anyone. She wanted to be an eternal virgin, like Artemis. She wanted to be free and enjoy the outdoors. One day, Apollo saw Daphne and fell in love with her. He tried to approach her, but Daphne didn't like him. She ran away from him as fast as she could. Apollo chased her, but she was too swift for him. She called out to her father for help. Pinos heard her cry and helped and decided to save her. He turned Daphne into a laurel tree. It's a kind of evergreen tree with glossy leaves. Apollo was sad, but he also respected Daphne's choice. He said that the laurel tree would be a sacred plant. He said that he would always use the leaves to crown his victors. Even today, the name Daphne means laurel in Greek. The story of Daphne shows how powerful nature is and how it can interact with the gods. It also shows how Apollo cared for Daphne's wishes and her independence, even after she became a laurel tree. Another story that did not turn out well for Apollo is the one about Hyacinthus. Hyacinthus was a beautiful prince of Sparta. He was very popular and had two gods who loved him, Apollo and Zephyrus, the god of the west wind. The most famous story about him is a contest between Apollo and Zephyrus for his love. The story goes like this. One day, Apollo was teaching Hyacinthus how to throw a discus, a round metal plate. Apollo threw the discus very high and far. He was very skilled at it. Hyacinthus wanted to impress Apollo, so he ran to catch the discus. But Zephyrus, who was jealous of Apollo, did something evil. He blew a strong wind that made the discus hit Hyacinthus, killing him. Apollo was heartbroken. He did not want Hyacinthus to go to the underworld. He wanted to keep him alive. So he made a flower, the hyacinth, from his blood. He wrote AI on the petals, which means alas in Greek. He wanted to show how sad he was. Hyacinthus is remembered as one of the tragic love stories from Greek mythology. A story of jealousy and the transformation of love into beautiful nature. Another story is about Apollo and Cassandra. Cassandra was a very beautiful, intelligent princess of Troy. She was the daughter of King Priam and the Queen Hecuba. Cassandra had a special gift. She could see the future. But because of Apollo, her gift was also a curse. Apollo liked Cassandra and gave her the gift of seeing in the future. But Cassandra did not like Apollo back. She rejected him. Apollo was angry and cursed her. He made it so that no one would believe her when she told them what she saw. This made Cassandra very unhappy. She tried to warn people about bad things that were going to happen, but they did not listen to her. One of the worst things she saw was the war between Troy and Greece. She told the Trojans not to trust the big wooden horse that the Greeks left outside the city. She said it was a trap, but the Trojans did not believe her. They brought the horse inside the city and the Greeks came out at night. They attacked and destroyed Troy. Cassandra's story is very sad. She had a gift that could have saved many lives, but it was useless because of Apollo's curse. Her story shows us how hard it is to tell the truth when no one listens to you. It also shows us how Apollo was not always fair and kind, even though he was the god of prophecy. But the drama and love did not end here. Another one was with Coronis, a princess of Thessaly. She was the daughter of the king Phlegyas, who ruled over Lepid, a tribe of warriors. She was very beautiful, and she was attracted to Apollo. They fell in love and she became pregnant with his child. But Coronis was not loyal to Apollo. She had an affair with a mortal man named Ischus. Apollo was unaware of this, but he had a bird that spied on her. This bird was a raven. It flew to Apollo and told him that Coronis was unfaithful. Apollo was furious and he asked his sister Artemis to punish Coronis. Artemis, the goddess of hunt, she was very skilled with the bow and arrow, of course. She shot Coronis and killed her. Apollo regretted his actions after Coronis died. He wanted to save that child. He took the child out from her womb before she was cremated. He named the child Asclepius. He was a remarkable child who grew up to be the god of medicine and healing. He learned how to heal people from a centaur named Chiron, who was a half man, half horse. Asclepius was very proficient at his work and he helped many people. The story of Coronis and Apollo is one of the tragic love stories. So after hearing about Apollo, what do you think happens when he's challenged to a musical contest? There's one who dared to challenge him. Marsyas was a satyr, a creature who was half man, half goat. He loved music and he played the aulos, a kind of flute with two pipes. He was very talented at playing the aulos and he thought he was the best musician in the world. He was so arrogant that he challenged Apollo to a musical contest. Apollo was the god of music and he played the lyre. The challenge was accepted and agreed upon the rules. The muses, the goddesses of art, science, would be the judges. The winner could do whatever he wanted to the loser. They both played their instruments very well, but Apollo was better. He did something the Marsyas couldn't do. He turned his lyre upside down and sang while he played. Marsyas couldn't sing with his aulos because he had to blow into it. The muses decided that Apollo was the winner and Marsyas was the loser. Apollo was not pleased with Marsyas. He thought that he was impudent and foolish to challenge him. He decided to punish him in a very cruel way. He tied him to a tree and skinned him alive. He stripped off his skin and left him there to die. The story of Apollo and Marsyas is just not a story about the musical contest. It's a story about pride, revenge and power. It shows us how Marsyas was too proud and how he suffered from it. It also shows how Apollo was not merciful at all and that he abused his power. At last, there is of course the story about Apollo in the Trojan War. Apollo played a significant role in the Trojan War. He sided with the Trojans and opposed the Greeks. He did this because he favored Trojans and he was offended by the Greeks. One of the reasons why Apollo was angry at the Greeks was because they disrespected his priest Chryses. The Greek leader Agamemnon had taken Chryses' daughter as a war prize. Chryses begged Apollo to avenge him and his daughter. Apollo listened to this priest and sent a deadly plague to the Greek camp. This plague killed many Greek warriors and caused panic and disorder. The Greeks realized that they had angered Apollo and they returned Chryses' daughter to appease him. Apollo stopped the plague and showed the Greeks that he was a powerful and vengeful god. Another reason Apollo favored was Hector, the prince of Troy. Hector was a courageous and noble fighter. Apollo helped him many times in the war. He defended him from harm. He directed the spear to hit the right enemies and gave him a supernatural strength and speed. Hector fought well because of Apollo. But Apollo also did some terrible things to the Greeks. He killed one of the best warriors, Patroclus. Patroclus was the friend of Achilles, the strongest Greek hero. Patroclus wore Achilles' armor and pretended to be him, but Apollo interfered. He hit Patroclus and made him vulnerable, then Hector killed him. This affected the Greek morale and also led the return of Achilles to the war. Achilles wanted to kill Hector to avenge his friend. Apollo also killed Achilles, the greatest Greek hero. He did this by helping Paris, the prince of Troy. Paris shot an arrow at Achilles, but he didn't know where to aim. Apollo guided the arrow to Achilles' heel, the only part of his body that could be wounded. The arrow hit Achilles' heel and killed him. This was a major blow to the Greeks. They lost their best warrior because of Apollo. Apollo was a formidable and influential god in the Trojan War. He was not only the god of beauty, light and music, but also the god of plague and death. He changed the outcome of the war with his actions. He affected the lives and emotions of both the Trojans and the Greeks. This was the story of Apollo. We hope that you enjoyed it. If you want to see more content, then consider subscribing to our community. Thank you for watching and until next time.